Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're going to continue reading. We were last reading the prayers of King Kulaksheka. You remember? Should I write it? Yeah. No? Yes?
Was this from Friday, Gurudev? Or
You sure? From Wednesday.
Wednesday was Ishopanishad. It just started, so this was the continued translation.
Okay. In this mantra of Sri Ishopanishad, the devotee prays to the Lord to rectify him from within his heart. To err is human. A conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls. The Lord takes charge of fully surrendered souls. Thus, all problems are solved simply by surrendering oneself unto the Lord and acting in terms of his directions. Such directions are given to the sincere devotee in two ways. One is by the way of the saints, scriptures, and spiritual master, and the other is by way of the Lord himself, who resides within the heart of everyone. Thus, the devotee fully enlightened with Vedic knowledge is protected in all respects. Okay, so let's dissect this a little bit, one by one. Are you ready? Hare Krishna. Here we go. Fasten your seatbelts. You know, Prabhupada used the S word, surrender. I know that scares everybody. When you become, when you have when you get to the stage, at least the stage of ruchi, then the word surrender will inspire you and enlighten you, because you know that's where all the nectar is. Then maybe on the stage of nishta, you're less frightened. And as you go down the scale, you may be more and more frightened by the idea. Surrender, because surrender means giving up our independence. But you probably know that the reason you're in the material world and have a material body is because of misuse of independence. So it's a real paradox to be afraid of surrender when we misused our independence to not surrender to Krishna and thus suffer. I mean, I don't know if you like having a body, but sometimes we suffer physically or emotionally and we'd like to get out of our body. You ever have that feeling? Even just a bad headache or some emotional pain, and we wish, well, I could just be out of this body, then I wouldn't have to experience it. So, it's the misuse of independence that got us the very body that sometimes we'd like to get out of. Not that we necessarily want to kill ourselves, but sometimes it was just nice. If you're really disturbed, it would be nice if you weren't in the body to experience that disturbance. Or even something simple like you have to use the restroom and there is no restroom. At that moment, it would be easier if you weren't in a body. Just no body would make, no restroom is required, right? So it's the misuse of independence or not surrendering to Krishna that's causing all the problems, what to speak of getting old and dying. So don't let the word surrender scare you. It should actually enlighten you. It should make you feel very, as we say in America, warm and fuzzy. It should make you feel very, that's a saying for feeling very satisfied and comfortable. You have that saying in England, warm and fuzzy? Yeah? You have that in India, Abhishek, warm and fuzzy? No? Germany? No. Warm and fuzzy means it makes you feel good, So the word surrender may not make you feel good, and in another stage of devotion, the word surrender makes you feel very good. So, so the first thing Prabhupada is saying is that in this verse, the devotee is praying to Krishna to rectify himself within his heart. Now, this can be very empowering or very disempowering. Uh, Very empowering because this is the desire of the devotee, and the devotee is hankering after purification. His whole life is meant for purification. And the devotee knows that on his own, he can't do it. He needs Krishna's help. It's empowering because it doesn't mean the devotee doesn't try. It doesn't mean that he gives up and just turns everything over to Krishna and does nothing. That would be the disempowering part of it. Krishna, I can't do this on my own. What's the use of trying? Either you do it all or this problem is not going to be solved. So that there is some degree of that mood. Krishna, I can't do this on my own. You have to help me. But I think we were mentioning in the last class or one class recently that Krishna, he puts us, devotee was asking me about my, how I became a devotee. And I was explaining that. And he said, well, was this just a karmic thing that you became a devotee? And I said, it's both, because the situation provides itself to take to Krishna consciousness, but it doesn't mean you're going to. So if we're praying to Krishna, Krishna could help us by giving us what we need. Okay, Krishna says, okay, I'll fulfill this desire and I will help you remove this obstacle. So once the obstacle is removed to advancing in Krishna consciousness, it's up to us to advance, because maybe Krishna removes the obstacle and we don't do anything. We don't utilize it. It's like I can give you money. You're in poverty. You're suffering. Okay, I can give you money, but you can go out and buy drugs with it and remain in poverty. So just having the money is not enough. You have to know how to use it. Invest it, save it, spend it frugally, etc. So if we're praying to Krishna to help us, it's not like, okay, Krishna, once you help, that's it. I don't have to do anything. No, Krishna might help you by putting you in a situation which is optimal, externally or internally. And then we have to take advantage of that. So when we pray in a helpless mood, it doesn't mean I'm not going to try to help myself. It just means that I feel that the obstacles or the anarthas I have seem impossible to overcome without your mercy. But if you give me mercy, then I will take that mercy and I will utilize it. So that's important. Otherwise, there's a fine line between Krishna, I can't do this, and Krishna, I'm not going to do this. Krishna, I can't do this, I need your help. And Krishna, I won't do this without your help. No, we're always trying. We're praying and we're trying at the same time. Like even it's said sometimes, if you're in the mode of ignorance, and in the mode of ignorance, generally you have no willpower or very little willpower. So what do you do when you have no willpower? I just don't feel like doing this. At least you can put yourself in association of people who would inspire you. So maybe you have no inspiration of your own. So I have no willpower. I can't do this. But I can put myself in association of people who could inspire me. So even though it's not my will, I'm getting, by their association, I'm getting the will. So at least if I couldn't solve the problem on my own, at least I could get help. I could do something, right? So it's something like that we don't pray we don't pray giving up. I can't do this. Only Krishna, you can do it. That is a mentality. Yeah, Krishna, I can't do it. There's a mentality there. I need your help, but there's a willingness to do whatever I can. Is that clear? Yes, no, yeah. All right. To err is human. A conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls. So this is so beautiful. Basically, Prabhupada is just elaborating on the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, 10th chapter. So Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam is such a beautiful verse, and Prabhupada's explaining it here that Krishna, I need help. So Krishna from within will say, okay, I'll help you. I will get out of the driver's seat because you don't know how to drive this car. You're driving this car into repeated birth and death. I'll get in the driver's seat. You can sit in the passenger seat. Don't jump out. I will drive it. I will, no, I don't even have to, drive the car. I mean, that could be, but maybe a better analogy is, okay, tell me where you want to go and I'll tell you how to get there, but you have to drive the car. I think that's a better analogy. So that's what's being said. Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. I will give you you have a problem. I will give you the intelligence how to solve the problem, but you have to actually do it. That's just something that's not so easy, right? You ever, I was thinking before class, as having been a devotee as long as I have, when I'm hearing Prabhupada, when I'm reading Prabhupada, I'm hearing and I'm reading things that I've read many times before. And as I hear and read over and over again, one thought continually comes up is that Prabhupada is making this very clear, and he's consistent. He's saying the same thing over and over again. And do you ever have that feeling? You're reading, you go, this is really clear. Prabhupada is, he's saying it in so many ways. I've read this so many times. It's like I have to be an idiot not to get this. The problem is we are idiots because although we get it intellectually, it may not sink in any deeper. And therefore, Prabhupada is often saying things over and over again. It's kind of like the subline is, I'm not sure you got it the first time I said it. I'm not sure you got it the first 100 times I've said it. So I'm going to keep saying it. So this is something, what we're discussing now, this is something that Prabhupada has said over and over again. And I think we can see that the difficulty we may face is not that whether Krishna will give us the guidance, it's whether we as a driver will follow it. Krishna's saying, turn right. I don't know if I want to turn right. But the point is, one would think you want to turn right because you're praying for guidance. So, sometimes you want an answer to a question, or you ask a question, you want an answer, but sometimes you don't like the answer. You ever have that experience? It's like, oh, yeah, and it's like you get the answer and it's the right answer and you wish there was another answer. Or maybe you wish you hadn't asked that question because now you got the answer that you don't really want to follow. So that's the Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam. Krishna's, you pray for something, Krishna gives you the guidance and it's clear. Krishna's, giving you intelligence. And then it's like, well, am I going to do that? That's the real thing. So Prabhupada also said something else, which I think is extremely important to discuss. We have talked a lot about how Krishna loves us. And in the self-care workshop, we asked you all, give some indication of how you see Krishna's love. And we listed many, many ways, from basic things like Krishna's giving us food and shelter. And one of the things we listed was this, that Krishna, actually I listed it. Nobody came up with it, but I thought, well, this is like a big one. So I listed this, that Krishna guides us back to Godhead. That's a manifestation of his love. How is that a manifestation of his love? Well, it shows that he wants us. And it shows us that he's willing to guide us. And then someone might say, well, why did he make it so difficult? We have to pray to him to get guidance. And we're in this big jungle and there's so many tigers and lions that could eat us up if we veer off the path. Why didn't he just, put a rocket ship, like when we were born, just put a rocket ship there in the hospital and we can just go back to Godhead, business finished. Have you ever thought like that? Like, why is he making it difficult if Krishna loves you and he wants you to go back to Godhead? And it's like, like that joke, the guy goes to God, why did you make the opposite sex so attractive? Like, it's like, you want me to go back to Godhead. Why did you make money so attractive? Why did you make it so difficult to overcome fame? It's like, this doesn't make sense to me. If you wanted us to go, you would have just made it easy. But unless this is how we show our love for Krishna, by overcoming these things. So Krishna's willing to help us overcome them. He'll give us the intelligence. He'll give us the mentality that's required. So now that I have the mentality and the intelligence of what's required and what to do, will I do it? That's the big thing. Will I sit back and think, oh, that's too hard. All right, maybe it's too hard. But material life is harder. And we always have to remember that, it's like, yeah, it's hard, Abhishek, it's hard to study to get a medical degree, right? But it's probably harder to be a bricklayer or work on the roads, right? So it's like when you're deciding your educational goals, you're thinking, well, I could just, start a business. Maybe it'll fail, maybe it won't. But I'll do the tapasya to be a doctor, and then you pass your exams, and eventually you establish a practice, you get a job, and you're doing what you want. Hopefully it's what you want. But let's say theoretically you're doing what you want, and the difficulty pays off because now your life is easier than it would have been if you didn't go through all those years of study. So and you become better for it. You become more determined. You become stronger. So like what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. So like Krishna knows, I'm not going to give you $1 million when you're 5 years old. You're going to, what are you going to do with it? Buy 1,000,000 toys? So Krishna is like, no, you earn these anarthas. So you have to, it's not my fault you have these anarthas, you created them, you earned them. So now you have to learn how to overcome them. That's what you have to do. It's going to help you. And how will I ever know that you love me unless you do these things? Like for example, you Abhishek, you meet a girl and you're like attracted to her and you say, I've never met a girl like this in my life, and she's so special. And you go up to her and you say, I love you. And she's like, how can you love me? You don't even know me. No, I love you. And the girl, if she's smart, she's thinking, yeah, you like the way I look and you call that love. But if you love me, show me. Like, what can you do to show me? Would you be there for me in times of trouble? And this one lady who's popular on the internet about relationships, she said, love is simply that you care as much about the other person as you care about yourself. Like there's no difference. If you're in pain, they're in pain, you're in pain. If they're happy, you're happy. That's what love is. It's nothing more and it's nothing less. And I thought, yeah, that's a perfect definition. If you're in pain, I'm in pain. So you're going up to this woman and saying, like, how can you love me? You've never done anything. Would you suffer when I suffer? Would you sacrifice when I sacrifice? And Abhishek says, yes, I would. And she says, well, you'll have many opportunities to show that in our life because that's what love's all about. So she's in pain. She's having trouble. He's there by her side. He's comforting her. He's helping her through everything. And not only is she feeling his love, but his love for her is increasing. And he's feeling so grateful that I had this opportunity to go through this difficulty so I could show my love for her. Because otherwise, if there's no difficulty, how do you show your love if everything is just easy, right? And Abhishek, he's working hard. He's getting promoted. He's making more money. And he says, oh, I can show my love for my wife. We're living in a little apartment now. I can buy a nice condo in a nice neighborhood. I can buy her a nice car. I can buy her the things that she's never had in her life. So he feels honored. And it's money. He could buy things for himself. So I'd rather give it to her. And he feels happier giving it to her. at least for the first few years of marriage. After that, it could change. Yeah. But anyway, in the ideal situation, the sacrifice that he makes is what gives him pleasure, and of course, it gives her pleasure. So Krishna wants to see that. So are you willing to sacrifice something for Krishna? And whatever that is, whatever you have to let go of or whatever you have to do, Krishna wants to see that because that's love, and his relationship is based on love. So we should never shy away from the difficulty, the austerity, the confronting of anarthas and so on, because it's part of love. And if we can feel that as an act of love, then even though it's difficult, it won't be difficult anymore. Even though surrender is scary, it won't be scary. It'll be warm and fuzzy. It'll be loving. You'll feel the love. So that's why Krishna doesn't just give you the $1 million, doesn't give you the love for him. He wants to give it to you. He actually wants to give it to you, but he knows he can't give it unless your receptacle can hold it. He doesn't want to put it in a receptacle that's just going to crack because it's not big enough. So the thing is, if you're going to pray for love, then you have to have the receptacle to receive it. So whatever you're going to pray for, make sure you have the receptacle for it. And make sure, if you're going to pray for it, that you're willing to do it. And if you're not willing to do it, at least pray that you'd be willing to do it. That's the idea. Yeah. So that this point is important. To err as human, and we've discussed this in the self-care workshop. To err as human. So I think it's important that we hear that Prabhupada is saying it. As a Prabhupada is not condemning us for being fallen or condemning us for being full of anarthas. The only thing that Prabhupada would condemn us for is not trying, not for being contaminated, but not trying to be pure, because we are contaminated. If we're living in the material world for many lifetimes, we are contaminated. We will make mistakes of judgment. That's normal. We're conditioned souls. And so Prabhupada's saying, that's okay, but what you do is you pray to Krishna to help you overcome that deficiency, because that deficiency is normal. And so we depend on Krishna and we pray for that. And we shouldn't be discouraged by that deficiency, because we all have it. I just heard something really beautiful. And I decided to develop a course on leadership, because I see how within our Sangha and in so many places, good leadership is needed, and bad leadership is often just caused by ignorance, that we don't know what leadership is, and everyone is born to know it. So one leadership guru said something that I've often said, but I just like it when I hear it in the secular world, that they realize this also. He said that if a leader is not vulnerable, if a leader always puts on this face like they're perfect, infallible, nothing bothers them, nothing can stop them, it actually makes everyone else feel guilty, because everyone else knows that they're not like that they have faults, that they have dark nights of the soul. They sometimes doubt themselves. They struggle. They battle with human emotion, human frailty. And I've said this often, right? That when we put on this false front, it makes others feel like there's something wrong with them. Like, you're perfect and I'm not, so there's something wrong with me. Whereas when we're vulnerable, when a leader is vulnerable, it allows everyone else to become vulnerable, open up, and talk about what they need to talk about, their challenges, their problems, their insufficiencies, let's say, in doing a service, to be able to just openly come out and say, I can't do this. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time following these principles. So when the leader is like that, then everyone else can feel free and to be that way. And it's so important to be able to open up and talk about our issues, right? To create better relationships. And just for us personally, it's necessary. I was talking to some devotees, and they said that their spiritual master has very high standards, and she knows that not all the disciples follow them, but no one will come forward and say they're not. So she says, I know Not everyone can meet those standards. Maybe only a few, but nobody will say they're not because it's too embarrassing, and they'll feel that they will let down their guru. So nobody says anything. And she was saying this is a very unhealthy environment because it's artificial. And number one, we need to talk about it. Number two, we're just kind of pretending, and we don't. Pretension is really a big anartha, which Prabhupada says it can be destructive to our bhakti. To not be real about who we are, to pretend to be something else. So I understand why they may want to pretend. They don't want to let their guru down. And so everybody's doing the same thing. So then they're pretending to their guru and they're pretending to one another. And then they create a culture of pretension. It's not healthy. So I think by Prabhupada saying to err is human, we can be okay with not being perfect, talking about it, revealing it, and working on it, and it's just part of the process. And of course, as we're discussing here, the context is, okay, one of the reasons I pray is because I'm not perfect. I'm praying to become more perfect or better. So if I'm already perfect, I don't need to pray. Do you pray, Prabhu? No, I'm perfect. I don't need to pray for anything. No. What would you think if a devotee said that? Think, okay, Prabhu, Hare Krishna, I hope I never see you again because I don't like what you just said. Right? That's probably how you feel. I hope someday you realize you're not God. I hope someday you come down to reality. But the devotee who's willing to admit their faults, they think, wow, so inspiring, so honest, so humble, isn't it? It's inspiring, so real, so genuine. This is what Krishna consciousness is all about. So, um, uh, the conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measures to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord, so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls. So the prayer of this is, Krishna, I'm weak. Sometimes I commit mistakes or sins unintentionally. Prabhupada used the word unintentional. Did you catch that? Unintentional. Because unintentional is always forgiven. Intentional is a different thing. I did not intend to eat 14 scoops of ice cream at midnight. I just woke up starving, and that was the only thing in the refrigerator. And if I didn't eat, I wouldn't be able to go to sleep. So I wasn't going to bed praying that I would get up at midnight to eat the ice cream. It just happened. All right, eating ice cream at midnight is not a big sin. But we're using that as an example. It's unintentional. I didn't plan on it. Krishna, help me overcome these tendencies. If you're not honest enough to recognize your tendencies, then how could you pray to overcome them? That's the problem with self-deceit. If you deceive yourself in such a way that you don't recognize what you need to work on, then you can't work on it. And then you can't pray for Krishna's help because you don't know what to pray for, because you're not acknowledging what needs you have or what challenges you have. So, we've often said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, introspect, don't find fault with others. See where you need to work on, because then you can pray to Krishna, please help me with this. Of course, we know, it's pretty obvious. We have lots of obvious problems, but maybe there's some that are not so obvious. That if we were more introspective, we would notice, and we could pray for that also. And then Prabhupada uses the word pitfall. What's a pitfall? Well, falling into a pit, that's a pitfall. And once you get into the pit, what happens? You may not get out of the pit. When you fall into the pit, you need help to get out of the pit, right? Yeah. So you pray to somebody who's out of the pit to help you get out. And then the example is the well covered with grass. You don't even see it and you fall into it. So that's not like we're saying. You don't even know what's wrong with you, and then you give into it, and then you end up in the pit. You go, I didn't even see that pit. And everyone else is saying, that was so obvious. The pit was right there in front of your face. Oh, I never saw it. Yeah, because we're we're not honest with ourselves. We don't see it. Okay. So a pitfall is something that is going to stop our forward march to Krishna. And our determination should be nothing. I will not allow anything to get in the way of my spiritual progress. That should be our determination, because sometimes, have you noticed, sometimes Maya is very attractive? Have any of you noticed that? And you're looking at Maya and you're thinking, wow, Maya does a really good job, right? This is so beautiful and this is so attractive. And I have this desire for this and that. And you look at it intellectually and you think, doesn't make any sense. And you have to appeal to your intelligence when you're attracted to something. And then pray to Krishna, please, Krishna, give me the intelligence not to give into this. That comes from our determination that no matter how attractive Maya is, I will not allow anything to get in the way of my progress towards Krishna, and that will save you. That mentality will save you. I want to do this. It's attractive. I like it. If I weren't, you ever have this this feeling, this realization that there's something you would really like, but you're a devotee, so it's like you can't do it. You shouldn't do it, and you don't want to do it, but you want to do it, and you think, if I weren't a devotee, I would definitely do this. You ever have that thought? Maybe you could write down all the things. If I weren't a devotee, this is what I would do, because those are all the big obstacles, right? Isn't it? Have you ever heard me say that? Like they go, Prabhu, do you want to do this? And I'll say, yeah, if I wasn't a devotee, I would. So it's expressing what this body, mind, and senses would like to do. But now that we're devotees, it's like, no, but now that I'm a devotee, no, I'm not going to do it. Can't do it. I'm a devotee, right? So what is that? Where does that come from? It comes from this determination that no matter how attracted I am to something, I have to utilize my intelligence, and my intelligence tells me, don't be an idiot. Don't be a fool. Don't ever do anything that is unhealthy for your bhakti. And so no matter how much you want to do it, because your desire to be Krishna conscious is strong, you don't do it. And if your desire to be Krishna conscious is not strong enough, you give into it. So if you're ever wondering why you're giving into something or how to overcome it, just turn the knob up on your desire to be Krishna conscious. Turn it up to 10. And when it's at 10, it doesn't matter how attracted you are to anything. It's like, no, I'm not going to be stupid enough to do something that's going to be bad for me. Just have that intelligence. And then another thing to think is that that intelligence has been given to you by Srila Prabhupada in every page of his book. So having been given that intelligence, how can I do something unintelligent? That would be like turning my back to Prabhupada. It would be a travesty to Prabhupada's books, because he's given me the intelligence. You know this. Prabhupada is telling you, you know this, you know this illusion. You know this is going to be destructive for your bhakti. You know this. I've told you why. I've told you how it's destructive. I've told you how to avoid it. So when we think like that, then we can remind ourselves, yes, in Prabhupada's books, I have the intelligence. And if I'm to do what is most important, and if I'm feeling weak, just go to the books and read, and then you will get clarity. Yes? Because the motive to surrender, it always has to be strong enough so it's going fast enough to outrun Maya, because Maya will run after you. But if your desire to surrender is strong enough, you'll always be going faster. And so Maya doesn't really become an issue in your life because you want Krishna more than anything else. So Maya's like, oh, you're useless. I can't bother you. I'll go to somebody else. And she walks away like this. Can't do anything with you. You want to surrender to Krishna. That's how your life should be, right? Yes. The Lord takes charge of fully surrendered souls. Thus, all problems are solved simply by surrendering oneself unto the Lord and acting in terms of his direction. So I think that underscores what we were originally saying, that when you pray, we should pray, as Prabhupada's saying here, the ideal or perfect way to pray is pray and surrender. In other words, Krishna, what I'm praying for is what I really want. And I'm willing to take your guidance and inspiration as you motivate me and help me go in this direction. And if Krishna gives us the guidance and we say, oh, Krishna, that's too hard, it means we're not surrendered enough to follow the guidance. And that's unfortunate. You know, if we're getting good guidance and we can't take it, that is more unfortunate than having no guidance. It's a greater calamity than having no guidance, don't you think? Like, I'm lost, but nobody told me how to get out of here. Okay, that's unfortunate. I'm lost. Someone's told me how to get out of here, and I don't do anything. That's really bad. That's worse. So Prabhupada's confirming here that if we are surrendered, then Krishna will guide us. And what Prabhupada means here is Krishna is willing to guide us, and we're willing to take the guidance, and therefore he will solve the problem. So ultimately, if we wanted to paraphrase this, we could say, there's no problem we can't solve because Krishna will always help us if we pray for the help and we're willing to take it. That's so reassuring, isn't it? Like whatever problem you're facing, Krishna will help you with it if you're willing to be helped, if you're in a position to be helped. Now, how does he help? Well, sometimes you have a problem and you're praying to Krishna for help and you're on YouTube watching something, and then whatever you're watching is over, and then you start scrolling and this little 1-minute video comes up which just solved that whole problem. Have you ever had that experience? Or some little quote comes up and you're like, oh my, that was the quote. That just like, sometimes it only takes 10 words to solve a problem, or 3 words or 8 words, right? It's just if it's the right sutra, the right mantra. Or some friend shares a realization and it's exactly what you needed to hear. So Krishna can do it in many ways. He can reveal it from within, give you intelligence, but he can send people, he can send a little quote, he can send an event in your life that gives you some realization. So we are comforted by this, because what this means is that if I take to Krishna consciousness, I will be successful if I just surrender. That is, if I become, so what does surrender mean? Don't resist. If I don't resist Krishna's guidance, if I'm willing to take it, then I will be successful. Really, that's what Prabhupada's saying here. That's what I'm reading into this. Well, maybe not even reading into it. That's pretty clear what he's saying. Krishna will help you solve your problem if you're surrendered. So it just means if you're not resisting. So now we can think, oh, I can be Krishna conscious in this lifetime. Ultimately, whatever challenges I have, whatever anarthas I have that seem like they're never going to end, I don't have to worry about them because Krishna will help me overcome them if I'm surrendered. That is, to me, that has always been one of the most comforting verses in Bhagavad Gita. Dadami buddhi yogam tam, I give the intelligence by which you can come to me. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam apriti purvakam. If one who's always engaged in serving me with love, I'll guide them how to come to me. I'll give them the vision that's necessary to move out of the material world, the vision necessary to see our philosophy everywhere, to see me everywhere, to see how to solve the problem. Like, what more could you ask? I'm saying, why doesn't Krishna help me? He makes it so difficult. he makes it difficult so you become stronger, so you can transcend or purify yourself. But he's there holding your hand if you want it. But if he comes to take your hand and you let go of it, then what can he do? So as long as you're willing to hold his hand, he'll take you out of it. And therefore ultimately we have no concern that we can't become pure devotees in this life, because Krishna is willing to help us do that. And if Krishna helps you do something, then could you get any better help than that? Of course not. Right? Like if you could choose anyone to help you in the universe, who would be the first person you choose? Yeah, you would choose Krishna or Krishna's representative. So Krishna says, I'm willing to help you. It's like, okay, sounds good to me. Let's go. I'm ready to go back to Godhead, even though I'm a conditioned soul full of faults. I'm ready to go back to Godhead because he's willing to help me. Like, okay, now you can sleep peacefully tonight after hearing that, right? You have nothing to worry about anymore. The only thing we have to worry about is the surrender part. We don't have to worry about the Krishna helping us part, right? That part's already taken. Will Krishna help me? Don't stay up late at night wondering if Krishna will help you. Stay up late at night wondering if you will take his help, or how to take his help, or what do I need to do to become um, a proper partner in allowing Krishna to help me. Uh, Such directions are given to the sincere devotee in two ways. One is by the way of the saints, scriptures, and spiritual master. The other way is by the Lord himself, who resides within the heart of everyone. So we discussed that. Thus, the devotee fully enlightened with Vedic knowledge is protected in all respects. So you are protected, my dear devotees, you're protected through prayer. Wow, isn't that amazing? Through your prayers, you're protected. I should write that down, because that was not in the prayer application. I don't know if I say I'm protected by prayer, if anyone other than us will actually understand it. But I'm gonna write it down anyway. What do you think? If you read I'm protected by prayer, what would you understand that? Or would it need more clarification? I'm protected by prayer because Krishna will. What did Prabhupada say? Um, because Krishna will solve, Krishna will fulfill, Krishna will answer my prayers. Something like that. What do you think? Sound good? I'm protected by prayer. That could even be a t-shirt. Of course, I guess it's good if someone doesn't understand on a t-shirt, because what does that mean? And you'll say, this is what you'll say. You have to memorize this. The Lord takes charge of fully surrendered souls. Thus, all problems are solved simply by surrendering oneself to the Lord and acting in terms of his directions. Um, mm, Thus, the devotee fully enlightened with Vedic knowledge is protected in all respects. Um, Such directions by prayer, Krishna will reciprocate and direct you from within and from without, and thus you'll be protected. Krishna guides from within and without. Sounds like a good line for a song. Carolyn, what do you think? Within you and without you. Yeah, we can rewrite the Beatles. Yeah. From within and without. That's the name of the song. I'm protected from within and without. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be a beautiful song. Okay. I have to leave in 15 minutes. I'm going to a chiropractor. And the devotee, and I had lower back problems in my appointment. The therapist said my spine is like crooked. So we're going to see if we can uncrooked it, decrooked. I make up words, it's fun. Decrooked my spine. They're supposed to say make it straighter. That's not interesting. Okay, Samadarshini says it's so relieving to come to a point of accepting our imperfections. We don't need to pretend anymore and use so much energy by holding up an image of who we are. Relieving and challenging. Yeah. Um, so we did a course on humility in Australia. It was a shorter course, not the full course, but I ended up talking a lot about humility because I'm so humble. It's just natural, right? I don't know if there's anyone as humble as I am. So I'm naturally the right person to talk about it, right? So, but for those of you who don't know, that was a joke. I'm sure you know. So, um, one of the things that the beautiful things that comes up if you ever get into humility and what it is, and especially if you do a course, is we're trying to come to the point where we no longer want, or need to pretend to be somebody who we're not. Because if you're pretending to be somebody you're not, you have to remember who you're pretending to be, right? Who am I to you? You know, I forgot. Who did I, you know? Um, and you can't be yourself. So that causes all kinds of, internal turmoil because you can't, it's just easier to be who you are. It doesn't require any energy, any acting, any falsity, and so on. But to try to project an image of someone you're not for whatever reason we do it, it's just difficult. So uh, often the response in the humility class is the same thing that you're saying, Samadarshan. You say, that's a relief. So you mean I can stop pretending to be like this very advanced, pure devotee or whatever image I'm projecting to the world? I said, yeah, you can stop. You'll actually be happier. And not only you'll be happier, the people around you will be happier because, you know, it's it's nice to be around people who are real. It's not really nice to be around people who need to impress us with their whatever they're trying to impress us with. So humility, it may seem difficult, but in this sense, it actually makes life easier because, oh, Samadarshini, what you did, that was so stupid. And you're like, yeah, I know, I do stupid things. It's not a problem anymore because you're not trying to project that you're like the most intelligent person in Germany or now in Mayapur or the smartest woman in ISKCON or something. Yeah, I do stupid things all the time. It's just like whatever. I'm learning, I'll get better. It doesn't even bother you. But if you're trying to put on an image, then, oh, somebody popped my bubble and I have to act even more to pretend like this is really not who I am, right? This is like stupid. And in the self-care workshop, I don't know if you remember this, but there's a purport where Prabhupada saying basically, this Prabhupada said, if you act this way, you cannot become Krishna conscious. If you are duplicitous, if you're two-faced, if you lack the integrity of being one person always, you can't become Krishna conscious. That's pretty heavy. Do any of you remember reading that, me saying that? Said you cannot be Krishna conscious if you are trying to project an image, a false image of yourself on the world, because why are you doing it? You're doing it to get some honor recognition. And my dear devotees, the simplest way I can explain pride is simply trying to be Krishna. Pride is simply trying to compete with Krishna. That's the way we need to see it. So we like to be honored, but all we're doing is trying to be Krishna. We're competing with Krishna. And humility is when you stop competing. When one becomes humble, like really humble, that means competition has stopped. I'm stopped competing. I'm no longer trying to be God. But pride is full throttle on trying to be God. So if we're conscious of that, it's easier to be humble. But most of the time we're not conscious of it. We're just conscious, like I want people to like me and love me and think I'm smart and whatever. You know what a relief it is when you don't have to worry about those things. It's like, oh, you think I'm stupid? Yeah, you're right, I am. I'm in the material world for millions of lifetimes. So, I mean, how could I think I'm smart after having done that? And we do stupid things all the time. That's just the constitutional position of conditioned souls. So it's like, yeah, I'm not the smartest thing that ever walked the earth. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the most this or that. Yeah, it's just that's reality. And once I acknowledge it and you acknowledge it, and it's like everything's fine, right? And if you don't want to acknowledge it, like, why are you trying to be a devotee? It's like, it doesn't make sense. You're trying to project an image that I'm a great devotee or I'm a great whatever. You're in the wrong movement. You should like join some other organization where everyone's trying to be God. That would be a better organization. But this organization, we are not trying to be God, but sometimes due to conditioning, even in the name of bhakti, we try to do it. And that's why Prabhupada said, okay, if, there's so many things that are bad, but they're worse if you're a devotee and you do them. Isn't that interesting? Like, okay, this person's proud, or this person's envious, or this person's lusty, or whatever. And we'll say, well, it's just an ordinary person. They're not pretending not to be, and they're not trying not to be. They just are. So it's like, okay, that's just how they are. Right. And it's like, well, that's just normal for them. But when you're trying to be a devotee and you're doing that, that's bad news, right? Isn't it? Like, the congregation may be out at the bar, at the disco, at the movie, this and that. But when the priest is out at the bar, then you got a problem, isn't it? So, when you try to become a devotee, then these are the kind of things that we have to leave behind, right? So, we're still trying to get name, fame, and image. No, that will not work. That works if this morning I was reading this horrible book, and this guy is making I don't know what planet this guy is from. He's making the point that the most efficient way to be successful is to manifest narcissism, arrogance, artificial self-confidence, and so forth. He says that's what works. That's what works in the corporate world. And I go, well, if that works in the corporate world is pretty sick, right? So maybe it does, you're the CEO and you have to walk around like, manifesting like this false self-confidence and lying to people like everything in the company is great and I'm great and, nobody's going to lose their job and the next day everybody's fired. And yeah, so that's what he's saying, that's what he's saying. You have to do. It's like, so let's for the sake of the discussion, let's acknowledge this. Acknowledge, yeah, you want to be a good, although this goes against so much of what other people are teaching. But if we just say for the sake of argument, that's true. And you see somebody and they're like that, you say, well, they're not trying not to be like that. They have no reason not to be like that. They think it's pragmatic. If I'm, if I don't show any emotion and I just show that I'm rough and tough and self-confident, it'll help people. And if that's true, okay. But for us as devotees, no, that's taboo. That's not for us. So that's important to understand. Venkatesh says, regarding leadership, in spiritual life and in spiritual organizations, what can subordinates do to safeguard themselves and continue progress while they are facing obstacles coming from the narcissistic of leaders? I always say, be an example of the kind of leader you would want to follow. And so at least do that, with the people around you. And, you can influence people around you. This one, this one leadership guru says, you rank and file, you probably are never going to influence the leaders, but you can influence the person next to you, behind you, in front of you. And if they get influenced by your behavior and they start acting in more sattvic ways, and gradually as more people start acting in sattvic ways, you can start changing things on a microscopic level, which at some point could become macroscopic. It's possible. I thought that was good advice. It's always, because sometimes when you see misbehavior, it almost gives you like a feeling like I can misbehave also. Like misbehavior is bona fide. Well, they're doing it up there. I might as well do it. Who cares? So then you're giving up your integrity. Act as a leader you wish you had. That's the mantra. Yeah, Mark Twain said that if you tell the truth, you have nothing to remember. Yeah. So it's the same with action. Abhishek says it feels bad in engaging in material and then worse portraying it didn't happen and being duplicitous, being honest will feel at least better. Yeah. So, um, you have physical health, you have emotional health, and if you're dishonest, it doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, probably it doesn't feel good because it's wrong. For all of those who have an emotional IQ of minus 108, if here's a little emotional IQ lesson. If it feels bad, you probably are thinking or acting bad. Kind of common sense, right? Yes. Yeah. So if I'm not feeling, if I'm feeling bad, maybe I should question how I'm feeling. Like why? What's wrong? Now, guilt can be good to a certain degree because you can use it to inspire you. Oh, I feel bad. Why do I feel bad? Well, I did something bad. All right, let me rectify it, you know. But sometimes it's yeah, yeah, we feel bad because we're acting improperly, But of course, if guilt gets too extreme, then it's like, what's the use? We don't want to go there. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Anybody want to say anything else before I leave you hanging? Say or write something. Yeah. Um, so we should all be leaving very happy to know that Krishna will help us overcome all the impossible obstacles that we face, all the impossible internal obstacles we face, which are very deep and very numerous. And Prabhupada saying, no, you don't have to worry. Just stick around. Just don't give up. Stay in Krishna consciousness. Keep practicing it. And yeah, you will work. It will work on you. If you leave, then, if you give up, then, the saying, the only people who fail are the ones who give up. Sometimes you feel like giving up. It's like, what's the use? But if you keep going, you don't fail. It's the people who stop. They're the ones who fail, obviously. All right. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all. So we'll see you at Wednesday at the regular time. Let me just check my schedule. I don't like to schedule things at weird times, but this was the only time I could get an appointment. So yeah. Okay, we'll see you Wednesday.